الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the sixth in our series of Instagram lives all about gaining strength through the Quran and Quran journaling. Now, we've talked extensively over the last few weeks about how resorting to the Quran has been our only source of comfort in these difficult and distressing times. And it's been the only way that we can make sense of the atrocities and injustices we are witnessing daily. But this Quranic journey is not one that we should take on our own. And so here to talk to us today about how to build a Quranic family and how to take this journey together as a family is our very own brother Imranali Khaki. Some of you may know him from his amazing, exciting, innovative, educational videos all about how to pronounce letters in the Quran. And more recently, he's done some really amazing work about living the Quran. And if you haven't seen his presentations yet, please do have a look. They are really amazing. I highly recommend them. And without further ado, I'm going to add him just now to the conversation. But also, let me just remind you that the Gaza appeal is still open. So you can contribute to our Gaza appeal by... I'm just adding him at the same time. You can contribute to the Gaza appeal by ordering a copy of my Quran study journal. £20 will go straight to the Lady Fatima Trust Gaza appeal. So please do order your copies from our website, sunbehindthecloud.com. Just ordering for your community. We do give discounts, so please do drop us an email and we'll be happy to send those over to you. I'm just going to check if I've done this correctly. Yes, I have.
Assalamu rahmatullah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, shukr. And yourself?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
No.
I'm so pleased that we managed to find a time that you could come on. That's really our honor. Thank you so much.
No. Thank you. I've been following the amazing work that you've been doing both online and offline. So the honor is mine. Inshallah, we can really looking forward to this conversation, really, to learn a lot from you and from everyone else.
Inshallah. Also, yes, please, if you're listening to this conversation, please feel free to write your suggestions, comments, questions in the comment box, and we'll endeavor to read them out as well, inshallah. Yeah, no, I was so intrigued because I love that we get to read the verses before the conversation, because it kind of like really helps to gear everyone up to, inshallah, an excellent conversation. And everyone that we've had so far has come up with different verses and a different slant and perspective. So I'm really looking forward to yours today, inshallah.
Inshallah, looking forward to it. I think it's I'm really excited about this because it's almost like a journey that I went through in my mind. So hopefully I can do it justice by going through this journey with everyone. Obviously, all your guests before you are all scholars and have been are truly knowledgeable in their fields and with the Quran. So I feel a bit like a bit of imposter syndrome here.
Not at all. Not at all. Before we get started, I wanted to ask you on a personal level. You know, we've all really been struggling. I can speak for myself, for my family and friends. It's been a very, very difficult time. How have you found it, and how have you managed to cope in these difficult days?
So I think it's definitely been a struggle, especially initially. It's almost like a shock to you in terms of really how can people actually justify doing these kind of things, and how can people like just not care, and how hard are their hearts. And then you just go through hours on end on Instagram and YouTube and seeing all the videos and pictures and literally crying your heart out and just being like, firstly thankful that you're safe, your family's safe, but also like just no words can describe what they're going through in Gaza and Palestine. And then I think it's it's all of, then all those similarities came out from the Quran of Prophet Musa's time and Fir'aun, and going through all those verses, and seeing how history is repeating itself. And and then there comes a time where I think a few weeks in, then as humans, like, just so fickle of me, like it almost becomes like normal. Okay, another day, another bombardment and stuff, but you just almost become numb to it. But we should never become numb to it. But at the same time, we want to do something, and we want to act on it and go for the protest. We post on social media, but life is not the same. Like, just generally, and I've found it very difficult to before the war started. Like, I was posting a lot more consistently, and I just, life is not the same. It's you can't go about doing your day-to-day lives just as if nothing's happened. So it
Yeah.
has been very difficult.
And it's
But
amazing how verses that, I don't know, I feel like I've read before just didn't have the same context and relevance that if I read them now, I feel like they're just talking about what the current situation. And I never felt that connection to those verses before, but only after. I feel like every verse is talking about.
yeah, and that's the beauty of the Quran. It's a miracle, isn't it? And I think it's the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are there for all times and for all occasions and all scenarios, which is beautiful. Another testament to how miraculous the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I know you've chosen quite a few verses, so I'm eager to dive in.
Yeah, so I've chosen a few verses, and the first verse, I think, forms the first few verses will form the underlying thing that I want to, the foundations of how I want to carry on this discussion tonight. And the first one is Surah 47, verse 24. I think it's page 610. I'll do your job today.
Oh, that's actually really helpful. Okay.
So Surah Muhammad, verse 24. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in this verse, أفلا أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أفلا يتدبرون القرآن أم على قلوب أقفالها. And this is very important for me because, and it's really interesting that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions so many times in the Holy Quran about pondering on the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pondering on the Quran. And this really, actually, when we think about it, gives us so much more freedom and so much more openness when it comes to the Quran. Because a lot of times when I think about the Quran, I think, okay, I can recite it, maybe I can go through the meaning, but then other than that, sometimes tafsirs are like so deep, and where do I start, and what can I do, and all of that. And sometimes the English is so hard to understand, the tafsir. And it almost becomes like a barrier to entry, right, with the Quran. But this, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats it so many times in the Quran about pondering. Do they not ponder about the Quran? And this, you don't need any qualifications to be able to do this. Everyone can do this. And this is what? Pondering on the words of the Holy Quran. And it's an interesting one because I've been speaking to quite a few people lately about just how they've been connecting with the Quran. Just the way you said, right? Everyone's turning to the Quran. We can see Muslims, non-Muslims alike. Everyone's turning to the Quran. And the beautiful thing is that it's the ultimate book of guidance. And if it is the ultimate book of guidance, it should guide us throughout all scenarios, not just on how to become a better Muslim or how to pray properly. Every scenario should be able to guide us. And I've been doing this thing where we just open the Holy Quran, and just the right verses are popping out to you. Like even while doing some research onto this. Firstly, like I just want to thank you for this opportunity because it allowed me to research a lot of the verses that I wouldn't have necessarily come across. So it's just a beautiful thing, you know, when Allah Subhanahu wa Taala throws these verses out at you. And when you think about these verses and go through the meaning of these verses, then things open up. And you can then link and sync with the Quran a lot more. You don't have to wait to become to go to Hausa or study further
Mm-hmm.
for you to be able to have more knowledge about it. The key thing is that, you know, just the way we have when we have exams, we hold on to our textbooks like 24/7 because we know we have exams. We don't want to waste any time. Any opportunity we have to refer to those textbooks. Similarly, life is a test, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has told us to hold fast to this Quran, and all the answers of life are there. So therefore, we should hold fast to this book. But you know what? Sometimes textbooks get outdated. If I've passed, if I'm studying A levels and I'm holding on to my GCSE textbooks, that's outdated for me, right? But the Quran is so beautiful that regardless of how old I am, what stage of my life I am in, the Holy Quran is one, and it's a dynamic book. The same verses that I read when I was 5 years old, to the same verses I read when I'm a teenager, the same verses when I read when I'm later on. Those verses are not changing, but they're changing in terms of the meaning to me and how they inspire me. So that's something that's so beautiful about the Quran.
And it's amazing how the Quran has so many different layers. And then on top of that, what you might read and what I might read, looking at the same verse, will be perhaps different because of our circumstances and what the Quran gives us what we need at that time. So that's so true. It's really, really amazing to hear. Yeah.
Ahsantum, ahsantum, yeah, and that's why then we hear about these beautiful hadith about if everything was taken away from me in this world, the Quran is enough for me. And this is when we start thinking about how much the Quran can give us, then you can start understanding why these people say these things. The second part of the verse, where Allah Subhanahu wa Taala asks, "Or are there locks upon their heart?" And this was an interesting one because I was thinking, okay, how can I just make this a bit more relevant for me? And you know, sometimes when we approach the Quran, sometimes I have so many thoughts going on in my head. I have so many like things waiting for me, but I have not recited Quran yet, and I'm almost approaching it because as a tick box exercise, or because I feel bad not having recited Quran for the day. So I'll just open it, recite a couple of verses, and I'm done, and that's my guilty conscience done. But a lot of times, however we approach the Quran, that's how much we'll get from the Quran. And it's almost like, you know, a lot of times now when we want to unlock our phones, there's facial recognition, right? And similarly, I feel that um, for us to be able to gain the maximum from the Holy Quran, we need to approach the Quran in such a way, right? But sometimes I feel that, okay, I'm reciting the Quran, I'm going through the meaning, but it's just not clicking, and like I can't understand it. And 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 therefore, like, what's the point in me going through it? What should I do? Should I persist, or should I just leave it there? And similarly with the unlocking of the phone, you know, sometimes when you put the phone in front of your face is still the same, but it still doesn't unlock, and you try from different angles, and finally you persist and it will unlock. So similarly with the Quran, I feel we just need to persist and think about it. Take time to think about the verses of the Quran, and something will happen where Allah Subhanahu wa Taala just enables you to download those verses into your heart, and all of a sudden it just opens up for you. And that I feel is just the beauty of the Quran.
Yeah, and you're right. It's about sort of building a relationship. It's not something that may happen overnight, but it's almost like the more you talk to the Quran, the more the Quran will talk back to you. The more you interact with the verses, the more that they'll interact with your life and the more you can do. And, you know, but then having said that, just to take your analogy, let's just run with it. Sometimes when I'm cooking and somebody calls me, I need to answer the phone, I need to unlock it, but my hands are dirty. I can't, it doesn't work. My code, it doesn't click in. And in the
Yeah.
same way, the Quran talks so many times about sealing the hearts, sealing, having some sort of spiritual blindness, Allah sealing you because of your own actions. And so, although, you know, if we want to understand the Quran more, it's not just about those times when we go to the Quran, but also about those times outside of the Quran that we are kind of come to it with that sincerity of being able to respond to those verses with
100%. Just yeah.
clean fingers, clean heart.
Yeah, no, that's so true. But just taking that analogy one step forward, when your hands are dirty and you can't type in the code to unlock your phone, you have to go away and wash your hands or clean them. But the beauty is that we've all heard that about that hadith that says that your heart rusts like iron. And what is the thing that
What's the
cleans your
polish?
heart? The
Yeah.
Quran. So the cleansing is in the Quran itself. So we almost need to have its life is not okay. I have my work life and then I have my religious life. Islam is a way of life, and that's why I've tried to incorporate with the brand living the Quran, because
Yeah.
ultimately we have to live the values of the Quran for us to be able to be successful.
Very true. Very true. Absolutely. Superb. And I love the idea of living the Quran. It's such a amazing goal to have that, you know, I see some people, they see verses everywhere, like, and they feel like their whole life can be encompassed by verses in the Quran, and everything they see has a lesson that's in the Quran. And that's such an amazing, peaceful way to live, and definitely something to aspire to.
Ahsantum, ahsantum, so true. So with that in mind, and I think one major question is, okay, so living the Quran sounds like a buzzword and stuff. So how do I actually do that? And I've just wanted to share a few practical points on how we can do it and use and implement in our day-to-day lives using technology as well. So the first thing that really helps me, and whoever I speak to, I just try and share this as much as possible, and they come back to me and tell me like there's a lot that they've gained from it, and that's called the Kinder Surprise Challenge with the Quran. I don't know
Yeah.
if I've spoken to you about this or I've done it in one of my sessions.
Let's share it. Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially the Kinder Surprise Challenge, we all know those Kinder eggs that we love. There are three parts, key components to the Kinder egg. So there's the foil that we unwrap, there's the chocolate that we enjoy the flavors of, and then once we've enjoyed the flavors of the chocolate, there's the actual toy inside that we live and experience building it and playing around with it. So similarly with the Quran, three steps to fulfilling that. The first step is reciting in Arabic, and that's unwrapping the foil of the Quran. The second step is how do we enjoy the flavors of the Quran? And that is through understanding what the Quran is saying, and that's going through the meaning of the Quran. But the third bit is we want to actually experience and live the Quran, and that is now thinking and pondering on the Quran and seeing what we can do to take from these lessons and implement it in our lives, and so that we can become better individuals, Quranic individuals or Quranic families. So that essentially is a Kinder Surprise Challenge. So for example, if you spend maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day reciting the Quran, what I would say is we're all leading busy lives. If you can't give more, that's fine. Maybe cut down how much you recite. Maybe just pick on a couple of verses, 2 verses. Recite it, go through the meaning, and now think about the meaning and see how we can implement that in our lives. And now a few tools that we can use to do this and make this whole thing a bit simpler. Firstly, using technology is Tertil.ai. It's an app, and this app is a beautiful app. It's actually a game changer because it allows you to search for verses by using voice recognition. So you know there's all these verses that we hear, for example, on social media, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. But it's a beautiful verse. I want to find it. but I don't have Arabic capabilities on my keyboard, for example. So what do? So I went on to tartil.ai, clicked on search, and I just recited Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil and pressed search, and it got me that verse straight away, which was quite cool. And then what I did was I went to Quran Hadi app, which is another game changer, where I went to that address that tartil.ai told me to. It brought that up, and then what you can do with the Quran Hadi app is that you can bring up the meaning, and also you can bring up the interpretation and the tafsir. Now this tafsir is quite concise but easy to read, and it just gives you a good flavor, a good understanding of that verse or those particular verses. So that just helps you with giving you a starting point in terms of thinking about the verse and how you can apply it in your day-to-day life. Then obviously the most important part is writing it and journaling. Hence this book is a game changer. It's a game changer for me because I started off with this book. This is a book I've been shouting out about a lot, and the reason why is because it gives you word by word translation while you're reciting it. So this is more of a recitation heavy book, and as you can see, I've put like quite a few notes and stuff, but there's not much space on the sides to put your notes and stuff. So then now I've started, there's a lot more space here, so I'm starting to rewrite those notes over here. But then this just helps you. It gives you a lot more space and a lot more open-mindedness to be able to write your notes on the Quran. But the key thing about this is that the wonderful thing about journaling is that when you look back at these verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has thrown out to you on a regular basis, you can see how these verses, what they've meant to you at that moment in time, what your mindset was and what you've written, and you'll see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has literally held your hand every step of the way, which is such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing when you see it.
Yeah, I love how you said that. Absolutely. And from the beginning, you're saying that the Quran is not something that, you know, although we hold it in reverence and is a holy, holy book, it's still something that it's meant for you and I to read and understand and interact with and unpeel its layers and interacting with it through journaling and reading and, you know, however you interact best will unlock those layers for you. And like, I even enjoy journaling the moment, like, you know how you were saying sometimes, you know, we open the Quran to a random page and a verse kind of comes to us at that right time.
Yeah.
I even enjoy journaling that moment that I found that verse. Like, remember when you were struggling with this and you opened the Quran and this is the verse? So I even record the moment as well, because I feel like when I go back to that verse and I remember that I was feeling stuck about this, and then do you remember that you read this? Like, I'm almost like talking to myself in my own Quran.
That's brilliant.
Because I want you to remember that time when I was stuck and I found the answer, or Allah gave me the answer.
That's such a good idea. Yeah.
I feel like it builds that personal connection to your Quran, so that it's like your diary, in the sense that you are writing how you feel and the Quran is helping you through those things as well. So it can be quite cathartic as well, experience. And sometimes we might forget those moments if we don't record them. So that's been really helpful for me as well. But no, I love that. Quran Hadi and tartil.ai are really, really amazing tools to use alongside your Quran and your Quran study journal. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So then we all have this feeling of feeling helpless, right? And you have these questions. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let this happen? Allah is so merciful. Surely good should trump evil, but why do they seem so powerful? And one morning I was just feeling a bit down. I just thought, okay, I need to go out fresh air. Thankfully the weather wasn't as cold as it is now. Normally I would go out walk out the front door and go for a walk down the road. But this time I thought, okay, let me just go in the back garden and just sit there for a bit. And as I was going out of the door into the back garden, my eyes caught this, which is I love this. So this is a chart that we have for our kids. Actually, not for ourselves first, and then our kids. And it's by For My Iman. I think they are there. They're on Instagram. And what they've done is they've picked short verses from the Holy Quran, akhlaqi verses and stuff, and they just you're able to just share these small nuggets and stories with your kids and yourself using the Quran. And it's so easy because you can memorize them, but you can also apply them in your day-to-day lives. So my eyes got drawn to this verse here, which is the next one, Surah 6, verse 59, page 161. And the part of that verse is, وَمَا تَسْقُطُ مِنْ وَرَقَةٍ إِلَّا يَعْلَمُهَا. And not a leaf falls, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows it. And I feel it's so apt. The whole verse goes like this: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وعنده مفاتح الغيب لا يعلمها إلا هو ويعلم ما في البر والبحر وما تسقط من ورقة إلا يعلمها ولا حبة في ظلمات الأرض ولا رطب ولا يابس إلا في كتاب مبين. And with him are the keys of the unseen. None knows them except him, and he knows what is on the land and in the sea. Not a leaf falls but that he knows it, and no grain is there within the darkness of the earth, and no moist or dry thing, but that it is written in a clear record. And it just changed that whole walk in the garden, because obviously it's autumn slash winter time. You have so many leaves on the ground, and it was so apt because I come across so many leaves in autumn, I don't even give a second thought about them, but yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about every single leaf that has fallen down. Not only that it's fallen down, but from the time of its inception into its being and now fallen down. And it was like, wow. It was, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about even the smallest of things, or even the most mundane of things, then surely we can take solace from the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything. Like the verse says, and he knows about what's in the land and in the sea. You know, when you look out from the beach and you look out onto the horizon and you see the wonderful calmness of the sea, and what we will see is we'll just say subhanallah, we'll just say it's just a calming feeling, right? And we may see a few ripples, a few waves, maybe if we're lucky a couple of dolphins jumping, but that's about it. But there's so much happening, so much happening under the sea that we don't know.
We
But
don't
Allah
even
subhanahu
know.
wa yeah, exactly. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of not only is aware of everything, but he's sustaining everything. And that's just mind-blowing. And it's just so beautiful when you actually think about it. And you know those philosophical questions that you hear: if a tree falls in the forest, then
Yeah,
does it make
no
a
one's there
sound?
to hear it.
A leaf falls in the forest, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about that leaf too.
Absolutely. And just that means that if he knows about every leaf and every creature in the land and in the sea, then he knows what's in our hearts. He knows what's happening to the people in Gaza. He knows every intention and every feeling, and he knows that we're in pain. He knows that they're suffering so much. All of those things he is so aware of. And that's so comforting as well.
True. It's a very comfort. I mean, that's the only solace that we can take, that every seen or unseen act, like you said, even the intentions, the hidden things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. And even for us, whatever hardships were going on in life, whether it's to do with us or our family, or whether it's in our control or not in our control, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing everything. And we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our only hope and our only solace. So that was just gave so much hope when my eyes landed on that verse.
And it's amazing how you chose two verses with similar imagery. The first one being about locks and the second one being about keys.
Yes, yeah, I didn't notice that, but yeah, so true. The thing
Yeah,
of the
I saw
keys
that and I
again.
thought, I wonder if that was on purpose.
No, that was not. Well, God sent it on
Yeah,
purpose, but no, I didn't see that one.
probably. Even we all have barriers to understanding knowledge, and with Allah the keys to everything. So may He inshallah grant us unlock our hearts to these meanings of the Holy Quran.
أحسنتم. آمين. آمين. Inshallah. Inshallah. So,
And you know what
with that,
I also realized that the verses on the page afterwards, so that was verse 59.
yeah.
And then I just turned the page just to see, what was the context of these verses, and I realized that, I started highlighting. I think I ended up highlighting the entire page because the verses on this page were so. I don't know. They really spoke to me about,
Mhm.
you know, that it's He who takes your souls by night. He knows what you do. Everything is by a specified term. All of these verses really, really, resonated with me, especially with everything that's going on. So yes, absolutely.
It's just
Um,
re-emphasizing the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control and in charge of every single thing. No one else but Allah. And I think everything has its specified time, like it says, right? So even when we see the atrocities and the oppression that's happening, everything will happen in its specified time. And it's not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not watching or is not aware.
and that all judgment is His. And that can either be hope or a threat, depends who you say it to. You say Allah is the judge, and Allah is all aware. For one person that's comfort, and for another person that's really scary.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you. You wanted to move to the next verse.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
good, it's good. Um, so as time has gone on, I came across this verse and it gave hope. But obviously, still things are still happening. Oppression is still happening, and again that feeling of helplessness creeps in again. Because you see what's happening is even worse now. Day by day, it's getting worse. And you see all the videos of everyone, of the people, the Palestinian people, just being so strong in their faith and saying, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. I think Sister Nazmina beautifully went through it. So we won't go through that one. But sometimes what we do is we forget that we're all on our own journeys. And that we're all exposed to these elements for a reason. And yes, what's happening to Palestine and the Palestinians is brutal and it's crazy, and we should pray for them, and we really should stand up for them and do everything in our power. I recently came across a hadith the other day which said that we should live in such a way that we should be an antagonist for the oppressors and a hope for the oppressed. And that was just so beautiful, because when you feel helpless and you say, is my stuff actually working? Is me going for the protest or sharing stories and stuff on social media is actually working? The least we can do is actually be a thorn on the side and not let them do things and get away with it. But at the same time, we should be there for the oppressed, and in whatever way we can, and I'll come to that in the next few verses. But with this particular verse, um, uh, what got me thinking was that, okay, there's external things that are happening, but there's also my journey. All of us are on this journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and perhaps we need to take inspiration from what's happening and almost create a revolution within us so that we can improve and we can become better, and we can just make society around us that much better. And therefore this next verse from Surah Hujurat, verse 13, page 620 in your book, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O mankind, indeed we created you from a male and a female and made you nations and tribes that you may identify yourselves with one another. Indeed, the noblest of you in the sight of Allah is the most God-wary among you. Indeed, Allah is all-knowing, all-aware. And firstly, just to be at the beginning of the verse about being from different backgrounds and tribes, one of the key thing here is, and the cause for all misunderstandings and arguments and wars and stuff, is because there's no tolerance for each other. And this is one thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us so beautifully in Surah Hujurat, that He has made us of different backgrounds. But for what? So that we may know one another. لِتَعَارَفُوا. And sometimes when we bring this back into our own daily lives, we know how quick we are when we see someone in the mosque or someone outside with talking differently from us or looks differently to us, and we're so quick to judge them, or they may be not conforming to the norms of society, and without even batting an eyelid, we pass a comment or we laugh at them, or even in our mind sometimes, even we may not be we have all our filters on and everything, and we may not be explicit, but sometimes in our mind we think, oh, that guy's a bit strange. But have we ever, do we ever give people the benefit of that, or do we ever actually go to that person and speak to them and get to know them before even passing a comment, even in our mind? And that's something that has really struck out to me, that it's so easy to pass comments and judge people and stuff, and it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us He's made people different so that we may know them.
And in other parts of the Quran, He said, if we had wanted, we would have made you of one community, we would have made you all the same. But whereas people, like you said, see difference as a kind of igniting discord, actually the Quran is saying that differences between people are actually a source of getting to know each other. They're a source of understanding. A way in which we can understand the human condition is by seeing differences between us and getting to know one another. And so you're right, when a lot of what's currently happening is because of intolerance. It's because of seeing people as the other. And that's why we can't have peace unless either one is exterminated or the people can't live together in peace. So I think you're completely right to point that out. And we can really gain a deeper understanding of the human condition if we take that time.
So true. And also, like, in a team, if everyone had the same strengths and the same weaknesses, then it would be a bit lopsided, right, that team. But if everyone's coming together, everyone has their own strengths, and those strengths are overcoming each other's weaknesses, then that team comes together and gels and is a lot stronger, right? And what's the goal? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says then in the middle of the verse, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most honorable of you in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the ones that are most God-wary, God-conscious. And this is the true success, true measure for success. A lot of times in society we'll think, okay, true measure of success in school is getting straight A's or A stars, or true measure of success in society is the ones who are millionaires and billionaires, or have successful businesses, or who occupy big positions in society. Is that the true measure for success? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the true measure for success is the ones that are most God conscious. You can have everything in the world, but if you don't if all your decisions are not guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're making those decisions or going about life without having Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as your ultimate goal, then something is wrong there.
And
So
another thing, like, how would you suggest, like, as a family, we could inculcate that into our lives to be more God conscious?
play the game of snakes and ladders. And you're probably asking, what, really? But for me, it's the perfect analogy of life. Because when you play the game of snakes and ladders, what is where we all have these different counters and we're all going through life. And what's our ultimate goal? To get to number 100, right? And just for illustration purposes, number 100 is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we go through the roller coaster of life. We'll get opportunities in life that we can climb up ladders that will really take us close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll make some decision in life that will take us down a snake. But again, we start again and we go through life. And everything that we do, we're just going through the motions. And ultimately, our ultimate goal is to reach number 100, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you know what? The cool thing about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that number 100 in the game of snakes and ladders is just one person. Only one person can win. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everyone can win. What does he say in the Holy Quran about وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا? Hold fast to the rope of Allah all together and do not be disunited. Sometimes we feel that, okay, I've got a trade secret, or I'm doing well, I should not share things with me, otherwise I'll have a lot of competition. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually saying the opposite. He's saying, come together, help support each other so that we can get as close, we can all win, and we can get as close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as possible all together. So yeah, I feel the game of snakes and ladders is
analogy. And the person who's winning is not the one with the shiniest counter or the biggest counter or anything like that. It's where you are on the, on that journey, inshallah. Inshallah, we'll be playing that with our children now.
Make sure you buy the game of
understanding.
snakes and ladders. Maybe we need to do a sun behind the cloud version of snakes and ladders.
Let's do it. Inshallah.
So yeah, the next, I don't know how I've been speaking for a long time. I don't know how much time we have, but
we're okay.
Do we have time
far.
to go through a few more verses?
Yeah.
Okay. So some of these pictures are really heartbreaking that we see, and these videos. You know, there's pictures of mothers and fathers hugging their kids for the last time, or like, and you see how strong they are, and like they're just to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those are like heart-shattering pictures, but at the same time very inspirational pictures. And it reminded me of this verse, which actually confused me, but then I started thinking about it, and maybe together we can piece it up together. Page 358, Surah Al-Kahf, verse 46. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير أملا. Wealth and children are an adornment of the life of the world, but lasting righteous deeds are better with your Lord in reward and better in hope. So when I was thinking about these verses, it confused me because obviously our children, we're so possessive about our children and our wealth, and we're all told, okay, we need to give our children the right upbringing, and we need to make sure that they're brought up well, they have the right education, they're taught good manners and stuff. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they're an adornment of the worldly life, but the enduring good deeds are better to your Lord. So it was like, okay, what's happening here is putting them down as opposed to was there a different way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have probably told us, maybe use your children to get closer to Him and stuff like that? And it was an interesting one. And my thoughts again, like this is not from any background whatsoever. I was just thinking about it. Perhaps sometimes what we do is that we take our close ones for granted, right? When we see those pictures, I think one of the first things that I did was go. My kids were sleeping. I went and hugged them and kissed them and almost woke them up. But it just makes you say Alhamdulillah at that time that our kids are safe. But at the same time, it's just heartbreaking to see those pictures come through. But perhaps we need to look at this with the game of snakes and ladders in mind now that we have a bigger goal, and our goal is to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And perhaps those good deeds, enduring good deeds that will help us get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, perhaps the key thing is to change our approach when it comes to our kids and our wealth. Make those as investments for us for the akhirah, as opposed to just enjoying them in this world. And that's the angle that I perhaps approach this verse with. That we're told about awladu salih and your kids being an investment for you. Even when you pass away, if they're good children, then you'll keep on getting those benefits. So perhaps even with our money, in terms of investing them rightly, for thawabul jar, so those investments that will keep on helping you while you've passed away. So that's the thing I was thinking about. Perhaps when we look at our children now, or when we're trying to organize their timetable, or trying to decide which school to take them, which friends to have for them, which extracurricular activities to keep them in, perhaps rather than just looking at, okay, he'll become a better footballer, or this school will take him far to this university, perhaps we need to look a bit bigger and better. Will this school make him well-rounded? Will this school actually help him become a better person? Will these friends, are there a good influence or a bad influence on him? And things like this. And that's the kind of vibes I got from that verse. I don't know what your thoughts were on that verse.
Yeah, no, I completely see where you're coming from. And many times in the Quran, wealth and children are sort of alluded to as the kind of fleeting part of this world. Or even when we talk about the Day of Judgment, it's like a child won't talk to their own parent, and the parent won't talk to their child about. There'll be nothing that each other can do to help each other at those times, and it'll be everyone for themselves. And those verses, and these verses in particular, talking about the fleeting nature of the adornments of this world compared to the righteous deeds that will be everlasting and enduring. And when I see these really heartbreaking images from Palestine, I see how the parents there have losing their children hasn't weakened them. You know how, for example, if somebody goes through, loss, it can really, depending on how attached they are to that thing. When I say attached, I mean in a very worldly way, not attached in, with love and a Quranic perspective of love. If they're attached to them in that way, it will bring them further away from God.
Yeah.
But if they're attached with a Quranic perspective, or with the understanding that this life is short, they're almost able to give their children. And that's how we've seen these parents being able to cope, is because they know their children, their lives have not ended, and their pain has ended, and they're living, an eternal life in bliss and away from the difficulties of this dunya. So it's almost like, if wealth and children can be great, and wealth and children can be awful, depending on how you take them, and whether they have a connection to God. And that's with everything that you have in this world.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, everything is a tool, or everything can bring you to God or away from God. Even things like social media, or every single tool that we have can be used for both, you
Mm.
know, good and bad. So we have to think about how we're using these things and how
That's
we view our children, um, and you know, really take that perspective that this life is short.
so true. So true. Okay, so now we're building a bit of a thing. We're going on this journey now, right? So
Yeah.
we've identified pondering on the verses of the Holy Quran, and then knowing and understanding that we're all from different tribes and backgrounds, so that we can try and tolerate each other and know one another. And then ultimately, our goal and objective is being God. We're inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. And then we said that, okay, how is it that we one example that we can all use so that we can remember this. Then we said the game of snakes and ladders, and then we said that, okay, now we seeing all these pictures of the kids. So this now this is forming the crux of it with the whole Quranic family kind of thing, where we've identified, okay, we're blessed with wealth and children. We need to use them and bring them up in the perfect and correct way, so that we can then all get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or number 100 in the game of snakes and ladders. And one of the first things I told you that I did when I saw those, when I keep on seeing these pictures of mothers and fathers and grandfathers holding and hugging their kids for the last time, is I was thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about my own kids as well. And this comes to my next verse, in Surah Al-Ibrahim, verse number 7, page 307, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala beautifully puts it, very beautifully puts it. وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِنْ شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَإِنْ كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. And when your Lord proclaimed, if you're grateful, I will surely enhance you. But if you're ungrateful, my punishment is indeed severe. And it it's when you're grateful about things that you make the most of them. Sometimes we take things for granted. We'll take our kids for granted. We'll take our wealth for granted. When it's taken away from us, that's when we realize, okay, I was blessed. Um, and 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 this painting behind me, I don't know if you can see. I give this example a lot, of this kid holding a simple cabbage, and for me, it just made this verse make so much sense, because this kid, I feel the smile that he has on his face is as if he's holding a pot of gold, but he's holding something as simple as a cabbage. Whereas alhamdulillah, we've been blessed here, where we have a house, we have a business, we have friends around us, we have family, we have society around us, and yet we can almost take them all for granted and think, oh, life is bad. Why is God picking on me and stuff like that? Whereas if we truly think about what we have, and we're truly thankful, no matter how big or small, whatever we have, if we're truly thankful, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ, and we're grateful, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Now, a lot of times we hear that if you're grateful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you more. Actually, if you look at the Arabic, لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, it's almost like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying that He will increase us. The meaning on this over here, right, is he will enhance you. What a beautiful meaning. That we're all on this journey of snakes and ladders to grow and get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just by getting a lot more doesn't necessarily make us get closer to Allah subhanahu. By increasing us, and making us go up the levels and increasing our capacity to take in more, that's how we'll get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I just found this verse so beautiful, that thankfulness, just make sure that we don't take things for granted, but at the same time, it's helping us grow. And what are the ways that we can be thankful? It's not only just saying, "Oh, thank you, Allah, Alhamdulillah, that my family is safe, or that my family is good." It's actually taking the time and playing with your kids and giving that upbringing that you would have enjoyed when you were young, for example, or even when you see how much happier your kids become when you actually drop
Mm.
everything, you put your phone on the side and you spend some time with them playing
Mm.
games. It doesn't always have to be educational stuff, but just spending that time messing
Mm.
around and stuff.
Mm.
Obviously, do the educational stuff, memorizing the surahs, teaching them the Arabic alphabets, going through
Mm.
different exercises and stuff. But that is showing practically how thankful you are to Allah
Mhm.
subhanahu wa ta'ala for these amazing, amazing,
Mm.
amazing gifts.
Yeah, I think you're very right. And you know that picture behind you, I really love it. It reminds me of an incident that actually happened last week to
Okay?
me. I was at the food bank and helping out, and a lady came in, and that day we don't know what we're gonna get on a particular day. That day
Yeah.
we managed to get some fresh cauliflower,
Okay.
and she said, I made a dua last night that I would get some cauliflower. And
No
I'm
way.
amazed that today you have some. And she was
Oh, wow.
so grateful. She was so thankful. This was literally such a big thing for her. And it really made me think about the verse that you had just mentioned previously. Sometimes when we have so much wealth, kids, everything, we have all these things, but they're almost a barrier to our gratefulness. I have to
Mm.
persuade my children to eat cauliflower because they have so many other things that they could
Yeah.
enjoy, you
Yeah.
know? Or sometimes the amount of things that we have make us stop appreciating them because we've got so much and it's so easily available. But for sometimes that can distract us. But really, when we take the time to appreciate everything, everything is enhanced, everything is enjoyed more. And when I see these people in Gaza appreciating, the very, very little food that they have,
Yeah.
or the very, very little shelter, and really banding together and helping each other, it really, it makes me realize that in our excess of things, we're forgetting the individual value of each thing. We just take it for granted. Open the tap and there's fresh water. It's only
So
when you
true.
don't have it, or the water's cut off for some reason, or you're in a situation where there's no water, do you appreciate those few drops of water and what a difference that they can make.
So true. So true. Asanto.
So I think
Asanto.
we have, I don't know, on a personal level, I have so much to learn up from people less fortunate about gratefulness and
Yeah.
appreciation.
Yeah.
Um, and I can see why, wealth and children can be something that takes you away because you take it for granted. And only when you lose those things do you feel really that you only have God to rely on.
Mm. Ahsantum, ahsantum. Now, just wanted to be a bit more practical in the sense that, okay, so how do we practically be thankful and
Yeah.
show gratefulness for our kids? And I said, okay, spending time with them and playing, but how? And I would really like any viewers who have kids or have examples to share their examples as well. Be nice to have this open platform so that they can share their examples. But I'm just going to give you a couple, and then we can then discuss it and go back and forth as well with the viewers. So the best upbringing that you can give your kids is by enhancing their relationship with the Quran, because that gives a perfect foundation. And one beautiful way of creating that relationship with the Quran is not just by forcing them to recite, okay, recite, make sure you're reciting the tajweed rules properly, makharij. It's actually through stories. All kids love stories, right? And the Quran is full of beautiful stories and inspirational stories and stories that young and old can relate to. And once the stories, there's so many stories about Prophet Musa, and one that I want to pick up on is from page 443, Surah 26, verse 62, Surah Shu'ara, where this is when Prophet Musa and his people are running away from Pharaoh. Pharaoh and his army are hot on the heels of Prophet Musa and his people, and all of a sudden they reach the sea, and now they're stuck, and it says that their eyes lock with Pharaoh's people's eyes, and now the people turn around to Prophet Musa, and they're so scared because they have nowhere to go. They know this is the end for them, and they turn to Prophet Musa and ask him, okay, now what? What do we do? And what does Prophet Musa say? Don't worry, chill. Kalla, inna ma'ya Rabbi sayahdeen. That's it, just that calmness and that just yaqeen of Prophet Musa at that moment in time where you know you're facing certain death, and saying, don't worry, God's got us, He's got our back. And having that faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can see that in the videos and the pictures that we see with Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel, the parents like just saying this is a sacrifice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and like knowing that God has got their back. It gives you so much peace and calm, and it almost allows you to do the extraordinary. What did this pure high level faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable Prophet Musa to do? Split the sea, and they passed through. Now imagine if we can take this into our lives. Inshallah, we can reach that stage of faith and that yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But even on a smaller level, like how much faith can it give us, and how much peace and calm? Like for example, at work, in business, if you're trying to achieve your targets and you're almost there, and then something happens and it takes you a few steps down, and you start to panic, and you're thinking, oh man, what's going to happen? These things that are not in your control, obviously everything that's in your control you work hard to do. The Prophet Musa and his companions, they worked hard by running away from Pharaoh and trying to save themselves. But now this situation has occurred where it's not in their control. They have the sea in front of them, they have Pharaoh behind their backs. But this is when your true test of faith comes in. And similarly in life, when you have those tight deadlines, or you have exams coming up, or you have issues in the family, or issues with money and stuff like that, if you've done everything that you can, we have to have that secret ingredient, and that is that pure faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you have that pure faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it almost takes those worries away. And you think, okay, I've done my bit, now it's on God. You're in charge, you're in control, you've taken care of even those leaves that have fallen in the forest, or even all those things that I don't see in the vastness of the sea or the lands. I'm your servant, I'm your slave. Surely you're going to look after me. And when we start looking at things from that angle, then all of a sudden life becomes a bit more peaceful, a bit more calming. Yes, it's not that we won't have stresses or tests in life, but we'll go through it a bit more peacefully, knowing that God has our back.
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been that faith and tawakkul is the only thing that will be of any help at those moments. I mean, when you're backed up against the sea or an army, Allah is your only resort, and that faith that, you know, Allah will help, Allah will intervene, Allah can see everything is really the only comfort at that point.
Something true. And so this is a story that you can narrate to your kids.
Yeah.
Another story is we all take our kids to the park, and we all know how much our kids love finding a stick in the park, right? And they'll play with it, they'll do all sorts with it, their imagination runs. But something maybe you can explain to them stories from the Quran as well, and explain to them a story about Prophet Musa with his stick, and you can make it almost like a nice kind of story with all the different sounds. And I do this with my kids, where I've taught them the story of when Prophet Musa went to the mountain, and at that fire where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to Prophet Musa through the fire, and he asks him, what's in your stick? And I almost make like a big heavy voice, and I with my kids, and I say, Musa, what's that in your right hand? And then my little one says, it's my stick, I use it to walk and herd my sheep. And it almost becomes like a fun thing that you're sharing, but it's also actually a true story from the Quran. It's something that they can relate to, a different way that they can relate to the Quran. And then I tell them, okay, throw your stick, and they'll throw it, and they say, oh, it becomes a snake, and I'm scared of it. And you're almost reliving that story from the Quran just from a stick that you found in the park. And that's just one small example. There's so many different examples from different stories in the Quran that we can just relive, that we can just approach the Quran differently from a different dynamic and almost take it out from these covers and live the Quran practically.
Yeah. Yeah. And kids love it when you play with them and you know, narrate these stories in
Yeah.
dynamic ways. Would be a great way to share the contents of the Quran without sort of sitting down and studying a book. Absolutely.
Ahsantum, ahsantum. So true. Now this, I've said quite a few examples for young kids, but also, for example, kids that who are preteens, teenagers, and post-teens as well. Like they're people that can think and are going through their own challenges in life. And everyone has role models, for example, or everyone has people that they look up to, or legends, in whatever sphere it is, whether it's uh, society, business, sports. And there's this one class that I'm preparing for with my madrasa kids, and they're into basketball. And I've told them, okay, why don't we identify verses from the Quran that will enable us to become the best basketball player? And go one further. Let's pick a legend. For me, a legend in basketball is Kobe Bryant, and see what characteristics made him to be one of the best basketball players ever, and see what the Quran says about those characteristics. So picking up on stuff like that and just linking with things that they're interested in, the Quran is there as the ultimate book of guidance, and it'll have everything. So for example, there's a video that I watched about Kobe Bryant where he talks about time, maximizing your time. And he says that everyone will come into practice for 9 a.m. I'll be at
Yeah.
practice since 7 a.m., 6 a.m. And I'll come back again and again, and I'll just make sure it's all about repetition, making the most of my time. And we have the concept of time in the Quran, Surah Al-Asr, a beautiful example. And similarly, there's so many different things. Another thing that he said was, we all have this potential and we need to all make sure that we maximize our potential. Maybe this is something for the viewers as homework, or if you can share what verse in the Quran can tell us about maximizing our potential. But also similarly in the Quran, we have our own legends as well. It's good to relate to legends that in our time and era, but there's so many legends, legendary stories in the Quran. For example, the whole وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. That's such a legendary story, something that just sticks in your mind forever. Thinking about when you hear about the whole story about them fasting for 3 days, and each time they, I don't know about you, but like iftar time, I struggle
Yeah.
to be very, very, very
Maghrib.
courteous and stuff. But but they all gave their food,
Yeah.
and not 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. But the punchline is what? Ala hubbihi, for his love. And they're number 100 in the game of snakes and ladders. They all know what their objective is. And every decision that they make, they have number 100 in mind. What is it that I'm going to do now when I'm faced with this situation that will take me close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This decision that I make, will it take me, like enable me to climb up the ladder? Will it take me down that snake? And when we think about this, every decision that we make, all of a sudden we see things so differently, as opposed to being pulled by our lowly desires. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has just blessed us with so much. It's just so many different stories about legends, so many legendary stories in the Quran. You just need to go through them, think about it, ponder on it, and just action on it, really.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And kids love stories, adults love stories too. So yeah, picking those out and really finding those role models within the Quran is really key.
Santo, Santo. So one final verse, I'll be very brief on this, but I think this just encapsulates everything. And this verse is from Surah 63, verse 10, page 666, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that spend from what He's given us. And even like when death approaches, people will say, my Lord, if only you would delay me for a brief term, so I would give charity and be of the righteous. And this is like baffling. Like, you would think that if people are seeing their end of time, surely they would say, okay, send us back, give us more time to pray more, or
Mm,
to do more good deeds and stuff. But this is specifically for charity, and it was like
mm,
amazing. It was just it was amazing to see that how much emphasis charity has in Allah
mm,
subhanahu wa ta'ala's eyes. And we should be doing our bit to contributing towards all the beautiful organizations that are helping the Palestinians and all the oppressed and all the poor around the world. But one thing to remember is that charity is not only money.
mm,
So just because I may have little money or I have a lot of money, I shouldn't just give money as charity. Our Look what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is that He's provided us so much. The verse says, and spend from what we have provided you.
mm,
وَأَنفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided us with what? All this physical ability, with a smile, with so much potential, energy. So more than just money, time. We give
mm,
our time, we give our thoughts, we give our ideas, everything that we can do to give so that we can make other people's lives better. That's considered charity. And
mm.
and yeah, I was just blown away by the fact that people will want to ask for more time just to give charity. That was brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah. And all that thing that we have, that wealth, that time, those things, they're all from Allah.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't worry about them diminishing, or, if I, give such and such amount of money or time to one organization or another, then I'll have less to, do anything. It's all provided for by Allah. So may Allah put barakah in our time,
I
and
mean,
may He also put barakah in our provisions and our wealth and our children as well. And inshallah, one thought experiment that I heard, I find it very poignant, is to sort of close your eyes and imagine yourself on the Day of Judgment, and imagine that you've asked for more time. And then imagine that Allah says, okay. And then when you open your eyes again, that's the moment that you've started your life again. And you've come back to this world at that moment. So imagine that Allah said yes. And then imagine that now it's like you've been sent back. Are you going to change? Are you going to do anything differently? And sort of try and start your life afresh from that
mm,
moment.
that's such a
Just
beautiful
spending,
exercise.
yeah, spending some time just visualizing. I think a lot of the Quran has amazing imagery and examples in it. If
Yeah.
we spend some time interacting with that and just visualizing those concepts in the Quran and doing those thought experiments, it can really change our lives and
Mm,
change our perspective.
100%. Oh, that's a brilliant exercise. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a game changer, really.
Yeah, try
No doubt.
it. It's a bit
No, no,
scary,
for sure.
but yeah, absolutely. May Allah grant us a deeper understanding of the
Amen.
Quran,
Amen,
and
inshallah.
really help those people in Gaza that He knows of, whether they're under the rubble or whether they are in very difficult camps where there's no shelter and there's no food, and some of them have lost their children either through death or because they cannot find them. May Allah please reunite those families and really bless them and increase them in
Amen.
their provisions, in their wealth, in their faith, and make us of those that are of some help, and make us of those who learn a lesson from the things that we see around us and the verses that we read in the Holy Quran, inshallah.
Inshallah.
I
Ahsantum. Thank
must
you so
thank
much
you
for this
so much.
opportunity. It was really, really God sent. It gave me the opportunity to look into the Quran a bit more and go through the verses that I wouldn't necessarily have come across. So thank you.
My pleasure. Really, these sessions are an opportunity for me myself to interact with the Quran and verses and people's perspectives. So I must thank you really from the bottom of my heart for your time and
Ahsantum.
for all your insights today. I really have so much more to think about, and inshallah journal in here as well. So thank you so much.
Ahsantum.
And
Ahsantum.
thank you to everybody who's watching. We're going to probably take a short break from these Instagram lives until the new year. But if you have any suggestions, please send them in as well. Thank you so much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.